Hey, welcome to Another Enneagram Podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yet another Enneagram podcast. But this one's different. Another Enneagram Podcast is here to help you be a better leader for your team.
We know leadership is already challenging enough, and it can be downright frustrating when your team communication breaks down.
Another Enneagram Podcast is here to tell you stories of leaders just like you who are learning how to lead their teams better with the Enneagram. If you want your team to communicate better, be more productive, and love their jobs, Another Enneagram Podcast is for you. Hey, welcome back to Another Enneagram Podcast. Excited to be here today. I'm Ryan. Got my friend Cody here with me. We're talking about the Enneagram and leadership, and excited for today. Last episode, Cody kind of grilled me a little bit on my story, my Enneagram journey, and some leadership stuff. And today the tables are flipped, and I get to do the same to him. Give it back to him a little bit. So excited about that. Cody, you ready for this?
Let's do it. Be nice, please.
All right. Well, okay then. Fine. I'll not ask the horrible, terrible question I was going to ask to start with. We'll go to softball first. So, man, just give a little intro to yourself. Talk about just your story, where you at right now. I know you mentioned a little bit of that in the first episode, but yeah, talk about the role that you're in and some of your responsibilities, and yeah, just so people can get to know that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So this story makes a little bit more sense if I go ahead and tell you. I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram, and so I was raised in southern Arkansas. Spent a lot of time on a pig farm, actually.
Lots of rice down there too, right?
Lots of rice, man. Yeah, a lot of mosquitoes too. But spent a lot of time on a pig farm with my dad. And now I live in Southern California with my wife, Alicia, and we work at a youth camp up in the mountains, about an hour and a half from LA. I never would have imagined living in a place where you are 2 hours from the beach. I live 6 minutes from a ski slope and about an hour and a half from Disneyland. So it's kind of like it's magic here.
That does sound like the perfect spot for a 7.
It actually is. It really is. And so, I'm kind of a weirdo out here because I actually don't enjoy the beach at all. So when everybody wants to go to the beach, I go hit either the snow or hop on my mountain bike or things like that. And so, I love it here in the mountains. But like Ron said, I have the privilege of working here at Camp Pondo. And so a big part of my role as program director is I get to recruit and lead our camp staff, both for winter camp and summer camp. We have anywhere from 20 to 32 staffers for each of those seasons. And most of them are college-age students, 18 to 22, 23. And so we actually use the Enneagram as kind of a common language as we move throughout our summer. When you pack about 16 girls into a cabin over the course of 10 weeks, there's bound to either be blood or death. And so we hope to introduce maybe some tools to keep them from killing each other and maybe even be friends and enjoy their time together. So that's a little bit about me.
Cool, man. So then talk a little bit, again, I know you shared just a little bit before, but go a little bit more in depth with your story on the Enneagram. How did that come about? And just take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was 19 years old, I hopped in with a couple of friends and we actually started a band. And so we've actually been traveling as a band for a little over 11 years now, which is kind of crazy. And so that's actually what brought us out here to California. And so all of us in the band had landed in Conway, Arkansas, which is where Ryan lives. So we
home
were
of the Wampus Cats. You got to look that up.
A Wampus cat. It's actually really cool looking. But I don't think it's a real thing unless there's
no, it is not a real thing.
Well, you know how they like drive through the city with those like mosquito foggers? That's bound to have caused some like mutations with
somewhere
with a street cat. So maybe there is a Wampus cat running around somewhere. But anyway, so we were in Conway, Arkansas, and got to spend a lot of time with Ryan. And Ryan was actually the one that introduced me. Actually took me to an event where they were introducing us to the Enneagram, and we actually went and sat at a Waffle House where he introduced me to what in the world a type 7 was. And I gotta be honest, that was a heavy day. especially when you got to the whole like childhood wound part, and we'll dive into all that stuff later. But I just remember like weeping in a Waffle House, and got a little tear on my waffle. But that was probably the least worst thing that was that had fallen in that waffle, so that's okay. But yeah,
hey, don't hate on Waffle House, man. Don't hate.
Man, I love that spot. Actually, they don't have them out here, so I miss it. So yeah, dove into Type 7, and what was really neat is at that time, the band that I was a part of had actually launched a nonprofit, like a parachurch organization, that our primary goal was to equip leaders within the local church to help creative leaders, production leaders, just be the best that they can be, and to create healthy cultures and healthy systems for people. And so I had been in like leadership roles, throughout my life. And I think a lot of people looked at me and saw like just a high energy kind of go-getter kind of guy, and thought, well, hey, you must be a leader. And they would just throw me in these situations without any proper training or without any proper tools. And man, I caught myself a lot of times getting frustrated and having a lot of people frustrated at me. And so the Enneagram actually gave me a lot of understanding as to the kind of leader that I was, the kind of leader that I could be. And then also helped me really grow an awareness to the things that were preventing me from being a healthy leader. Like one of the things in that situation was I caught myself, I think we were having like probably 2 or 3 staff meetings a week, which is way too many. But we were launching something new. And I found out that like beginning process was so life-giving for me, but there were actually people on my team that was like the worst place that they could ever be in. And I had these unmeetable expectations over them, and caught myself just like, why am I so frustrated? Why do we keep running into these problems? And so like how Ryan, you mentioned in the last episode that it helps you understand that people don't see the way that I see. They don't think the way that I think. They don't even put as much stock into things that I put stock into. Yep. And so it helped me be a more present leader. And that's pretty, I think it's a great attribute for any leader, but specifically for 7s. We're so prone to like being future minded and living in the what ifs and the what could be, that we miss out on so many things happening in the moment. And I think I was so in that season of my leadership, I was spending so much time planning for what wasn't actually happening, that I was missing out on some amazing opportunities in that like really fun, exciting launching chapter of our organization. And so it really just gave me language to my own frustrations and downfalls. And then it actually provided tools for me to grow and to get healthy and be the leader that I needed to be.
So in the last episode, I gave a little rundown of kind of what each Enneagram number, needed, their kind of core values. But why don't you, since you are a 7, tell what a 7 is in your own words, kind of explain that rather than having me, explain that.
Yeah. Walt Disney, Robin Williams, people like that. Man, 7s are these really awesome. Just they can be the you walk into a party, it's pretty evident who are the 7s in the room. They might be the one dancing on the table.
On the table, yeah.
Yeah, they might be the one that they're typically the loudest, really trying to take the party to the next level kind of people. And but 7s have this really weird downfall where we just want to avoid pain. We just want to avoid being trapped in the painful areas of our life. And so we fixate on fun, we fixate on adventure, we fixate on planning for all the things that could happen. And we love freedom. And so you can probably already imagine how that can be a little troublesome in the workplace. I think there's
let me ask this. I'm going to interrupt with this question.
Yeah.
Let's just say, hypothetically, there was some like global pandemic that caused people to have to like quarantine from others, stay inside, not go to do fun things because fun things are closed right now. If a situation like that were to be reality, how do you think a 7 would respond to that?
I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I think that they would absolutely lose their minds. I think that they may start randomly buying video game consoles, or
Oh no.
randomly buying new parts for their mountain bike, or
Hypothetically, how do their
yeah,
wives feel about that?
hypothetically they hate that stuff, man. And so I actually never pulled the trigger on an Xbox. I actually sold my Xbox, and we'll talk about that later, but actually that was one of those moments of like, I need to eliminate some distractions, so I sold it. But
Nice.
I regret that stuff, because quarantine would have been the perfect place to play,
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
sorry for interrupting. I just saw my
Oh,
chance. But
yeah.
well, talk a little bit then about that Enneagram journey a little bit more for
Mhm.
you, and what were some of the big aha moments you had maybe in the first, kind of season of exploring the Enneagram?
For sure. So I think the first steps were, I dove into Ian Cron's Road Back to You. It's a great book for anybody that wants
Great
to
book.
kind of start their Enneagram journey. And then from there, I went into Christopher Hewitt's Sacred Enneagram. And I love the way he sets that book up, because he kind of does what a lot of people do in the first half of the book. And then there's actually like 2 or 3 pages of like blank white, like paper. And then he says, okay, now if you really want to start digging in, like this is where we go. And he says a lot of people stop there with just kind of the basic head knowledge of it. And some people may even dive into kind of a deeper understanding, but then to take it to the next level of actual like embodying this information and allowing it to be transformational. There's somebody who quotes that. They say, information is not transformational. There's a process there. You actually have to like dig into it and grab hold of it and be open to all of the sucky parts that you're probably going to encounter in the midst of that. And so, yeah. So for me personally, man, you mentioned it last time, but I was really newly married in that season of life, and I'm married to a 6 on the Enneagram. And you want to talk about just some confusion, like early on in marriage. You're actually married to a 6 as well, Ryan. So
I am, yeah.
you get this. But a 7-6 combo is kind of interesting, because 6s can kind of be driven by fear. And I actually learned that that actually applies to me as well. And I didn't understand that, because I was always the dude that was willing to, do the backflip off the 40-foot cliff, or, hit the big
Yeah.
mountain bike jump, and didn't understand how I could have been driven by fear. But opening myself up to the fear, that allowing myself to experience pain, or allowing myself to actually commit to certain things, could mean that those things would come to an end, or that I may experience maybe a decrease in what I viewed as freedom. Man, it was heavy and it was hard.
Yeah.
But honestly, what has come out of that, I think, is, and I haven't gotten there, and I don't think I'll ever really get there, but just a pursuit of gratitude. They talk about for 7s this idea of gluttony. And if you look at me, I'm kind of a skinny dude. It's not by choice. I would love to be the size of my little brother, but it's genetics and maybe some other weird stuff. But so I don't overeat just a ton. But the gluttony they mention is this idea that we like overuse or abuse kind of these escape tactics. Like anything that gives us pleasure, anything that can help us escape from potential pain, man, we're so prone to just abuse those things and do too much of it.
Yeah.
And so over the years, I have been able to recognize when those things arise. I've been able to recognize, like, hey, I've been spending a lot of time like researching new mountain bikes. I have a perfectly good one, but I'm about 4 days into doing research on some new bike or some new thing, and it's like there's nothing wrong with the research, but it's the motivation there. Thinking that I'm missing something, or thinking that if I just had that next best thing, then I would be fulfilled in some way. So I think the thing for me, and hopefully for other 7s, is if we can get to a place where we can learn to be content and grateful for where we are and what we have, then we're not completely run over by the desire to plan and the desire to always be like living in the future.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. Talk for a minute. I know you kind of have a good story about your team and when your team first like encountered the Enneagram. I think if I remember right, you work with a lot of nines. Is that right? So talk about
Yes, I
that
do.
and what kind of an impact that the Enneagram and your team going through that together and learning about that made on your team as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a team of, I think, 5 or 6 whenever I first learned about the Enneagram and then introduced it to them. And so out of those 6 people, we had 2 9s, a 5, and then 2 7s. My little brother was one of those 7s. And what's really interesting is that the 2 9s that were on that team were the people that like at that point, we had been doing the band thing together for like 6 7 years. So like I thought that I knew these people. I thought that like we had like gone to the depths of, I've learned all there is to learn about these people. And, we had those clashing points. Like we had those things that just felt like, man, like why do we keep hitting this wall in our friendship and our working relationship? And as I talked about earlier, I learned that certain people just weren't overly amped up about launching new things and that whole process, And so when I learned that, I had like 2 9s, a 5, and another 7 on the team, it did, man. It helped me utilize the gifts and the specific passions that they had to create a more well-rounded culture. Because I think I was expecting things from them that they weren't. It's not that they weren't capable, but it's things that would have cost them a lot more energy or a lot more investment than the things that actually would come natural to them. And so I learned how to invite them in. I made sure that, especially for my 9 coworkers, that I reached out to them and made sure their voice like was heard and their voice mattered. For my 5 friend, it was like, hey man, here are the facts, here's the information. I hope that you understand all of this, and I'm not asking things of you that you're not fully equipped to understand and know. And then things like that. And so it really was life-changing for our team. It helped us show grace to one another. It helped us be more patient with each other. And then for me as the leader, I think it helped them understand that what I was going to bring in that season, like the vision and the dreaming and kind of the looking ahead, they could keep me in check with that, because obviously it's valuable, but it's not the only thing that's needed in that time. And so when I would time after time after time be like, yo, I got this idea. And then I would dump this 20-minute idea brainstorming session on them. And they're like, I thought we came here to talk about finances,
Right.
Something like that. And so, yeah, it was good.
So listening to you talk about all that, honestly, it sounds like a lot of work, right? It sounds like a lot of work to figure out how to interact with this person this way and this other person in this other way. What would you say to somebody who's listening, who's a leader of a team, who's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. I don't have time or energy to cater to all these different people. Why can't I just lead how I want to lead? And everybody else just needs to figure it out around that. What would you say to that leader?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is think about how much time you're going to have to spend hiring for those positions. Think about how much time you're going to have to recruit and interview and re-interview and that whole process. So what if you were to turn your attention, rather than to constantly trying to find something that's out there, what if you actually turned your attention to investing in and developing a deeper understanding for the people that you already have at the table? A lot of leaders, I think Seth Godin talks about a lot of, it's not about just having people on the bus. You got to have the right people on the bus. You got to have the right people in the right seats on the bus. Yeah. And so I truly believe that for a lot of us as leaders, we have people under our leadership in our organizations that have answers and ideas to problems that we don't even know exist. And so if you're willing to take some time to not just their Enneagram type, but just to understand what they bring to the table, their skills, their gifts, I think people are just waiting. I think people are really just sitting and waiting for an opportunity to contribute something to their workplace. And so when you open that door, And especially if you open that door with like empathy and you open that door with a desire to understand, I think you're going to get way more than you expected from that staff member. I think they're going to provide an exponential amount of not just like investment, but they're going to be able to do things that you didn't know that they were capable of. And so you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money trying to go out and find that person when you already have them like with you right now.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said at the beginning too about spending time, in interviews and all that stuff. Basically what we're saying is you're going to spend the time one way or another. It's not that you're not going to spend time on that person. It's just how you're going to spend it. And I would just second everything that Cody's saying here, that you can spend time, trying to find the right person, or you can spend time investing in the right person.
For sure.
And one of those has a long-term return for you, and one of them does not. Mm-hmm. I think, one of the questions I've heard before is like, so what happens if I spend this time and money and energy investing in staff people and then they leave? And the best response I've ever heard to that question was, well, what if you don't spend the time and money and energy investing and they stay? Right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah, so good.
So good. Well, okay. So let's wrap up with this. One more question for you here. For people that might be listening that think they might be or know that they are Enneagram 7s who are in a position of leadership on a team or in a company, what's your kind of golden nugget piece of advice to those Enneagram 7 leaders out there that are listening?
Yeah. So you said this earlier on, you said the idea of like listening. And I think every type, there's like listening and this. So every type is going to have to do something beyond that. I think for 7s is stop trying to bring people out of sticky situations. Stop trying to paint the silver lining on every situation. Sometimes things just stink, and you need to like get in the mud with those people and really dig in to figure out a solution. I think sometimes us as 7s, people bring problems or people bring complaints, and we're so quick to try to reframe it or turn it around as like, oh, but have you thought about this? And like, and try to make it into something positive, when sometimes we actually just need to sit in that, and we need to, there's empathy there. There's, I think, there's a lot of personal influence that is developed in those moments, because sometimes people don't need fun guy, or they don't need Mr. Energy. They just need somebody that's going to be there to listen, have their back, and create a lasting solution to a problem.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure over the course of episodes, we'll get into more personal stories and experiences and just lessons that we've learned along the way. But I think that's a good place for people to get to know you and a bit of your journey and leadership experience. And I'm excited to press on in some of these episodes. We've got some guests coming up that are real leaders, just like you, who are leading their teams and learning to do that better using the Enneagram. And I think there's just so much that we can talk about and so much that we can learn in this conversation. And so I'm excited for that. Excited to be doing this with you, Cody. Absolutely. And just excited to see where this all goes.
Yeah, love it.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Another Enneagram Podcast.
As fellow leaders, we know it can be frustrating when it seems like you always run into the same problems on your team with the same people. But leaders just like you are learning how to lead their teams better using the Enneagram, and you can too.
So if you like what you heard today, we would love it if you would share this podcast on social media and leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, preferably only good, reviews and ratings. That would be great.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram. We're at Another Enneagram, or head over to our website, anotherenneagram.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Another Enneagram Podcast.